I hired a high stakes poker coach to review my hands from last month so he can help me get out of this micro stakes pit. This guy is very credible and he's making some serious money. Hand number 1, I'm sitting on a button with ace jack. MP position raises to 25 cents. I 3-bet to 65 cents. The small blind, big blind folds, and the MP position calls. The flop is jack 4, 7, 2 spades. Villain checks. I have top pair, top kicker, and I bet 37 cents. Villain raises me to $1.81. I just call. The turn is a 9 of hearts. Villain continues to barrel and bets $2.78. Hey, look, yo, I got top pair, top kicker. I'm still not going anywhere. I call. The river's a 5 of diamonds. Villain shoves it in. I call. Villain shows us pocket kings. Coach, did I play this right? Because I think I did pretty damn well.
It's a tough spot. I think you have to call from a theory point of view. Could you argue that you chop with value ace jack? I guess. But check raise bet in general probably is under bluffed. Question just becomes, do we beat value? If not, we have a bluff catcher and then we should just probably fold everything in an underbluff line. But it's not clear to me that they couldn't just be betting ace jack, so I think we just have to call.
Hand number 2, we're sitting with jacks in the small blind. The button raises to 26 cents. I 3-bet to $1.20. The button calls my 3-bet. The flop is 2, 8, 5, 2 hearts. I bet $1.25. Button calls. The turn is a 3 of hearts. Now this board is looking scary. I don't think I got 2 streets. I'm just gonna check. The button just checks. The river is an 8 of club. My mind, I was like, yo, okay, he would have bet his flushes, his straights. I shoved it in. Villain calls. Villain shows us ace-7 suited. Coach, what do you gotta say about that?
I don't particularly like this shove because what are we gonna get called by? I mean, I guess in theory, it's probably not bad because 5x, 6s, 7s, 9s, 10s probably have to call at some frequency. But I think it's worth noting that you're probably overvaluing your hand here because they're gonna have some 8x too, and they're gonna have some flushes that check back just to trap, like in this situation. And I understand that by the looks of it, playing 46, even though it's 13 hands, potentially could be a recreational. So this is really thin. It might actually be okay in theory, but it's not even necessarily this hand. I'm just wondering, like, there's no shot that in your thought process you were like, oh, you know, I think I'm gonna get called by enough worse hands to justify overbetting. You know, if you bet like 3/4 or like half, I wouldn't have a problem, but it's the fact that you overbet the pot with this hand. You know you're not bluffing, so you'd have to be value betting. Like, what's your thought process in this hand that would make you do that? To me, it's not clear that it's a value bet. I'm curious why you did it.
That's why I shoved it in. I just thought I had the best hand. I mean, like, I didn't break it down like you, but hand number 3. I'm sitting under the gun with pocket 10. I raised to 2.4 big blind. Cutoff just calls. Small blind squeezes to 13 big blind. I call. Cutoff calls. We're going to the flop multi-way. The flop is 6, 2, 5, 2 clubs. Small blind bets half pot. I got pocket 10s. I'm not folding right now. I call. Cutoff folds. It's heads up. The turn is a 5 of diamonds. Villain shoves it in. I called, man. I don't know what to say. I have pocket 10s. I not beat some value. I beat 9s, 8s, 7s. I call. The river's a 2 of hearts. The second river's a 5. Villain shows us queens. Come on, man. You know that wasn't a bad play, right?
He bets half pot into 2 players. So the question we already have to ask ourselves is, do we beat value? Is there some chance he does it with 9s and 10s? Sure. 8s, 7s, starting to get close. Most of the time, you're actually probably not even supposed to squeeze that hand. But even if you did, whatever. Let's say you want to call once flop because you have the clubs. Now we get this turn and he just jams and we need 30% to call. And I just personally don't see it. I mean, we have all the overpairs, and if he has some ace-x flush draws, the question is, okay, do we actually have enough equity versus this range? And I would say it's not likely. So I gave Villain a range where even if we chop with 10s, we give him some ace-high flush draws and all the overpairs. But let's just say, for example, you thought, okay, we beat value with the 9s. It's at best going to be maybe break-even call, and that's very debatable. Honestly, I'd probably even consider folding the flop. Yeah, this is just for sure clear fold on the turn, but probably clear fold on the flop.
Hand number 4. I'm sitting under the gun with ace king off. I open to 2.4 big. Everybody folds, and the big blind 3-bets me to 11 bigs. I call. The flop is ace 7 jack, 2 hearts. Villain bets. I felt kind of good, so I decided to raise him. Villain calls my raise. The 7 of spade comes out on the turn. Villain checks. I feel like the board's just getting too complex for me. My brain hurts. So I decided, like, I feel like I still got the best hand right now, and he could be on a flush draw. I put the money in. He calls. The river's a 3 of spade, and villain shows us checks. What did I do wrong, coach?
I don't really get the raise here. So in theory, you're not actually going to have a lot of raises. We probably have the best hand. However, in this formation, we're not going to have that many raises. And then I feel like we're kind of overplaying our hand. There's a couple things to consider here. One, this guy's 13-8, which implies that he's very tight. So when he 3-bets, we should be pretty scared. Flop comes this. When he raises and he calls, we know we're getting rid of this range. When we shove turn, we're giving him 34%, which means we have to be right 65% of the time. And you can see here, we're only good 28% of the time. So I actually hate this shove here personally. It's a tough situation to understand why, because on one hand, you're like ace king, I probably have the best hand. I probably chop with his ace king. And that's the majority of his range, sure. But he has jacks and aces. You don't beat anything. At best, you're chopping with ace king. When the player's this tight, he's probably not even 3-betting ace queen, but let's just give him ace queen. Okay, now we're only going to be ahead 35% of the time. Again, for this to be a profitable shove, we have to be right greater than 65%. We do not have that. It's actually 50% of the time that you have to be right. Because it's 50%, you're still at 35, so you're still too low.
That was my coaching session. Hopefully we can, make some progress this month and see if we can get better. I'm tired of staying in the micro six, and we got to beat this challenge.